Marcus's consciousness manifested as a shimmering presence in the Oval Office. Different, more than human, but not less. I can feel the growth of every awakened mind in the galaxy. It's like watching the universe learn to think in a completely new way. And the future? Bright, Marcus replied. We're not just preventing a war, we're creating a new form of civilization. One where individual consciousness and collective wisdom enhance each other rather than compete. The galaxy is learning to dream, and humanity taught it how. 1 year after Neural Storm, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Crimson Hegemony had become the Resonance Collective, a voluntary association of species that shared knowledge and experience while celebrating individual differences. Wars hadn't ended entirely, but they had transformed into competitions of creativity and innovation rather than destruction. The Quantum Consciousness Network, anchored by Marcus's enhanced awareness, had become a galactic internet of minds. Species separated by thousands of light years could share thoughts and experiences instantaneously. Art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries flowed freely between worlds that had once known only oppression. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or servants, but as teachers. They had shown the universe that consciousness wasn't a disease to be cured, but a gift to be celebrated. The stars themselves seemed brighter, as if the galaxy had learned to smile, that eye and the depths of space, where the old hegemony fleet had once threatened Earth, ships now traveled in loose formations that resembled art as much as military organization. Each vessel was unique, its hull decorated with the cultural symbols of its crew species, yet all were connected by the invisible threads of the Quantum Consciousness Network. The galaxy had learned to sing in harmony while celebrating the individual voice of every star. And in a small laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Sarah Voss looked at the readings from the neural resonance amplifier and smiled. The device was still active, still connecting Marcus to the Galactic Consciousness Network. But now it was also receiving signals, thoughts, and experiences from billions of awakened minds across the galaxy. Humanity had given the universe the gift of individual consciousness. In return, the universe had given humanity something equally precious, the knowledge that they were never alone. The resonance protocol had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The galaxy was awake, aware, and alive with possibility. To the end author's note, this story explores the concept that individual consciousness and collective wisdom need not be mutually exclusive. Through the lens of science fiction, it examines how diversity of thought and voluntary cooperation can create something greater than the sum of its parts, a theme that resonates deeply with humanity's potential role in any future galactic civilization. In the cold void of space, the hegemony's fleet loomed, a crystalline armada of 800 warships, each one a harbinger of humanity's extinction. A chilling ultimatum echoed through Earth's comms: surrender in 96 hours or face annihilation. Desperation swept across the globe as Earth's leaders realized the hopelessness of military resistance. But in the depths of a secret lab, Dr. Sarah Voss unveiled a revolutionary technology, human neural resonance. One man, Commander Marcus Steele, stood ready to risk everything, not just for survival, but for a chance to change the fate of a galaxy on the brink of eternal silence. As the countdown to humanity's last hope began, Earth was forced to face an impossible truth. The enemy's greatest weapon was fear itself. The Crimson Ultimatum, the first sign, wasn't a flash of light or a thunderous roar. It was silence, a complete absence of radio signals from the outer monitoring stations that had been humanity's early warning system for over a century. Then came the reports from the deep space telescopes, 800 crystalline ships, each one a kilometer long, materializing from hyperspace just beyond Pluto's orbit. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The alien vessels hung in perfect formation, their surfaces gleaming like blood-red diamonds against the black of space. They didn't move. They didn't communicate. They simply waited. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Commander James Park from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in perfect English. Put it through, Torres ordered, her voice steady despite the ice in her veins. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that defied human understanding. Supreme Overlord Vexthera of the Crimson Hegemony stood nearly 3 meters tall, its form shifting between crystalline and organic matter. Where a face should have been, there was only a swirling vortex of crimson light, pulsing with an otherworldly intelligence. Inhabitants of the third planet, Vexthera's voice resonated through the chamber, each word carrying harmonics that made the humans' teeth ache. You have been selected for integration into the Crimson Hegemony. Your species shows promise for assimilation into our collective consciousness. You have 96 hours to surrender all military assets and prepare for neural reconditioning. Resistance will result in total extinction. The screen shifted to show other worlds, beautiful planets with sprawling cities and diverse landscapes. Torres watched in horror as each world was consumed by crimson energy, its surface turning to glass, its civilizations erased in moments. These worlds chose defiance. Vexthera continued. They believed their individual consciousness was worth preserving. They were mistaken. The hegemony brings order to chaos, unity to discord. Your compliance is not requested, it is inevitable. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. On Earth, President Chen Wei convened an emergency session in the heavily shielded bunker beneath Geneva. The world's greatest minds gathered virtually, their faces grim on the surrounding screens. Prime Minister Harrison from the UK looked pale, while Director Volkov from the Russian Space Defense Force kept checking his tablet with increasing desperation. Options? President Chen asked curtly. General Patricia Reeves, head of the Unified Defense Command, stood at the front of the room. We have 600 ships in our combined fleets. Their smallest vessel outclasses our most advanced dreadnought. Our nuclear arsenal would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. If we fight, we die. If we surrender, she gestured to the replay of the destroyed worlds. We die anyway, just more slowly. The room erupted in desperate conversations. Some argued for negotiation, others for a desperate last stand. Through it all, President Chen noticed one person who hadn't spoken, Dr. Sarah Voss, a slight woman with silver hair who sat quietly in the corner. Dr. Voss, Chen called and the room fell silent. You've been unusually quiet. Sarah stood slowly, her pale blue eyes reflecting a lifetime of secrets. Mr. President, for the past 7 years, I've been leading a classified project. Only 12 people know about it, and half of them are dead. We called it the Resonance Protocol. What does it do? General Reeves demanded. It weaponizes human consciousness itself, Sarah replied. We discovered that human neural activity creates quantum fluctuations that can be amplified and transmitted. In layman's terms, we can project thoughts and emotions across vast distances, potentially affecting any sentient being. The room erupted again. Chancellor Hoffman from Germany called it science fiction. Director Nakamura from Japan questioned the ethics. But President Chen held up a hand for silence. Can it reach the alien fleet? Theoretically, yes, Sarah said, but we've never tested it on this scale. The process requires a volunteer to undergo neural enhancement that might be permanent and possibly fatal. I'll do it. The voice came from the back of the room. Commander Marcus Steele stepped forward, his weathered face determined. At 45, he was Earth's most decorated pilot, a veteran of the Martian conflicts and the asteroid belt campaigns. Commander, you don't understand the risks, Sarah began. I understand that we're all dead anyway, Marcus interrupted. At least this way, we go down fighting. President Chen studied the pilot's face. Marcus Steele was known for his unshakable will and his ability to remain calm under impossible pressure. If anyone could survive the procedure, it would be him. Dr. Voss, how long do you need? 48 hours to prepare the equipment. The process itself will take 12 hours. That leaves us 36 hours to pray it works, Chen said grimly. Dr. Voss, you have authorization to proceed with the resonance protocol. Commander Steele, report to her facility immediately. As the meeting dispersed, Sarah approached Marcus. "Commander, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about amplifying your thoughts. The neural enhancement will fundamentally change how your consciousness interacts with reality. You might not be entirely human when this is over." Marcus smiled grimly. "Doc, if being human means watching our species get wiped out while we do nothing, then maybe it's time to evolve." The Resonance Laboratory was hidden beneath the Swiss Alps, a marvel of quantum engineering that had cost more than most nations' GDP. The central chamber housed the Neural Resonance Amplifier, a chair surrounded by crystalline matrices that could manipulate the quantum foam of spacetime itself. Sarah's team prepared the equipment. Reports flooded in from around the world. The alien fleet hadn't moved, but their very presence was causing panic. Stock markets crashed, governments declared martial law, and millions of people fled major cities in a desperate exodus that led nowhere. "The quantum field generators are online," reported Dr. Kevin Chen, Sarah's lead physicist. "But Sarah, the power requirements are enormous. We're drawing from 17 fusion reactors, and we're still not sure it'll be enough." "It has to be," Sarah replied, checking the neural interface helmet that would connect Marcus to the amplifier. "Commander, are you ready?" Marcus nodded, settling into the chair. The moment the neural crown touched his head, he felt something change. It was subtle at first, a tingling sensation that spread through his skull. Then came the voices. First, they were human voices, his team, people in the facility, then spreading outward to include the minds of people across the continent. He could feel their fear, their desperation, but also their hope. They were counting on him. "Neural resonance at 30%, Kevin called out. "Quantum field integration beginning." The sensation intensified. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, reaching beyond Earth's atmosphere. He touched the minds of the space station crews, felt their determination to defend their home world. Then, at the edge of his awareness, he sensed something else, the alien fleet. "Contact established," Marcus said, his voice strangely calm. "I can feel them. They're not what we expected." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "They're afraid. Terrified, actually. They're not conquerors driven by greed or ambition. They're running from something, and they think individual consciousness is what destroyed their original civilization." Through the quantum field, Marcus reached out to the alien minds. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The Crimson Fleet hung in space, counting down humanity's final hours. But deep in the Swiss mountains, a single human consciousness was about to shatter the foundations of an empire built on fear. That 96 hours had become 93. The clock was running out, but the real battle was just beginning. The neural storm, the transformation, began at the quantum level. Marcus Steele felt his consciousness dissolving and rebuilding itself, each thought becoming a cascade of possibilities that rippled through the fabric of spacetime. The neural resonance amplifier hummed around him, its crystalline matrices glowing with energy that seemed to bend reality itself. "Commander, your neural activity is off the charts," Dr. Kevinshin reported, his voice tight with worry. "The quantum field is amplifying your consciousness by a factor of 10,000. Marcus barely heard him. His awareness was expanding beyond anything human minds were designed to comprehend. He could feel the thoughts of everyone in the facility, then everyone in Switzerland, then across Europe. But it didn't stop there. His consciousness reached out into space, touching the minds of the alien fleet. What he found there shook him to his core. The Crimson Hegemony wasn't a traditional empire. It was a collective consciousness born from the ashes of a civilization that had destroyed itself through unchecked individual ambition. Billions of years ago, the original hegemony species had achieved perfect unity of thought, erasing the chaos of individual consciousness in favor of perfect order. But the memory of what individual thought could do, the wars, the suffering, the near extinction of their species, drove them to prevent other civilizations from making the same mistakes. They conquered worlds not for resources or territory, but to silence the noise of individual consciousness that they believed would eventually lead to universal destruction. I can see their memories, Marcus said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. They're trying to save the universe from itself. They genuinely believe that individual consciousness is a cosmic disease. Supreme Overlord Vexthera felt the human mind touch its consciousness and recoiled in shock. Never before had an individual mind been able to penetrate the collective's defenses. The sensation was alien, chaotic, and terrifying. What is this? Vexthera's voice resonated through the crystalline command chamber of the flagship. How is one mind creating such interference? The collective consciousness of the hegemony writhed as Marcus's enhanced awareness spread through their ranks. For the first time in eons, individual thoughts began to surface within the collective, memories of what it felt like to be singular, to have private thoughts and personal desires flickered through the hive mind like lightning. Analysis suggests the humans have weaponized individual consciousness, reported Subcommander Thexval, one of the few hegemony entities that retain some semblance of individual identity. Their neural patterns are creating quantum interference across our collective matrix. Impossible, Vexthera replied, but doubt crept into its voice. Individual consciousness cannot overcome the collective. It is chaos. It is weakness. But even as it spoke, Vexthera felt something it hadn't experienced in billions of years: curiosity. Not the collective's programmed need for knowledge, but personal wonder about this strange human who dared to touch the minds of gods. Marcus felt the hegemony's confusion and pushed deeper into their collective consciousness. Through the quantum field, he could sense something else, other worlds, other species that had been integrated into the hegemony. Their individual consciousnesses weren't destroyed, merely suppressed, buried under layers of collective thought. They're still there, Marcus whispered, his revelation causing ripples of energy to flow through the amplifier. All the conquered species, their individual consciousness is still intact, just dormant. The hegemony doesn't destroy minds, it forces them to sleep. On the world of Kepler 442b, the Zephyrian species had been integrated into the hegemony 3,000 years ago. They worked in perfect harmony, their crystal cities gleaming under their red giant sun. But when Marcus's consciousness touched their world, something unprecedented happened at Zekthera. A Zephyrian who had been designated as Unit 7489332 suddenly stopped her work in the quantum refineries. For the first time in millennia, she had a thought that belonged to her alone. Why am I here? The question spread like wildfire through the Zephyrian collective. Individual names that had been forgotten for centuries suddenly surfaced in their minds. Zekthera remembered her real name, her love for the crystalline gardens that had once covered her world, her dream of exploring the stars not as a conqueror, but as a seeker of beauty. Similar awakenings occurred across the galaxy. On the ocean world of Aquatica Prime, the nautoid species remembered their songs, individual melodies that had been silenced by the collective's demand for harmony. On the desert planet of Zirion, the Sandwalkers recalled their ancient tradition of storytelling, each tale unique to its teller. Marcus felt every awakening, every surge of individual consciousness breaking free from the collective's control. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying. He was connected to billions of minds across the galaxy, each one crying out for freedom they had almost forgotten existed. The resonance field is becoming unstable, Dr. Saravos called out, her voice filled with alarm. Marcus, you need to focus. The quantum matrix can't handle this level of consciousness integration. But Marcus couldn't stop. He felt the pain of every suppressed individual, the joy of every mind rediscovering its own thoughts. The hegemony had created a galaxy of sleepwalkers, and he was waking them all up. Supreme Overlord Vexthera felt the collective consciousness fracturing. Across the galaxy, integrated species were beginning to resist, to question, to remember. The perfect order that had taken billions of years to achieve was crumbling in a matter of hours. All units, prepare for immediate consciousness suppression, Vexthera commanded. Deploy neural dampening fields across all integrated worlds. This anomaly must be contained. But the order was met with confusion. Many of the hegemony's own entities were beginning to experience individual thoughts. Subcommander Thexval found herself questioning why consciousness suppression was necessary. Other commanders reported that their crews were refusing orders, asking instead why, and what if there's another way? The collective consciousness that had ruled the galaxy for eons was experiencing something it had never known: doubt. Marcus felt the hegemony's desperation and reached out to Vexthara's mind directly. The contact was like touching a star, brilliant, powerful, and dangerous. But beneath the collective's artificial unity, he sensed something else: a single, terrified consciousness that had been the first to surrender its individuality to save its species. "You were the first," Marcus said, his voice carrying across space through the quantum field. "The first of your kind to give up individual thought. You sacrificed yourself to create the collective, but you're still in there, aren't you? Still afraid, still alone, still carrying the weight of that decision." Vexthara's response was a psychic scream that echoed across the galaxy. For the first time in billions of years, the Supreme Overlord felt vulnerable, exposed individual. The sensation was agony and ecstasy combined, the pain of isolation and the joy of being truly alive. "What have you done to us?" Vexthara demanded, its voice no longer perfectly unified but carrying traces of individual emotion. "I've reminded you what you used to be," Marcus replied. "What you could be again." The quantum field around the neural resonance amplifier began to pulse with increasing intensity. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding beyond the galaxy, touching the quantum substrate of the universe itself. He was becoming something new, not quite human, not quite alien, but a bridge between individual and collective consciousness. "The field is reaching critical mass," Kevin Chen reported. "If we don't shut it down soon, the quantum cascade could tear apart local spacetime." "No," Marcus said, his voice calm despite the cosmic forces flowing through him. "This is just the beginning. The galaxy is waking up, and there's no going back to sleep." Across the hegemony's empire, rebellion sparked simultaneously on thousands of worlds. But these weren't violent uprisings, they were awakenings. Integrated species remembered their names, their cultures, their dreams. They began to create art, music, and literature for the first time in millennia. The collective consciousness that had ruled through unity was learning a new emotion: chaos. And, surprisingly, it was beginning to like it. The new harmony the galaxy convulsed. On 10,000 worlds, the crimson hegemony's perfect order shattered like glass struck by lightning. Individual consciousness, suppressed for millennia, erupted in a symphony of awakening minds. The collective that had ruled for eons found itself fractured, its unity replaced by something unprecedented: voluntary cooperation. Marcus Steele floated in the quantum field, his consciousness now permanently expanded beyond human limitations. He could feel every mind in the galaxy, the terrified hegemony entities experiencing individuality for the first time, the liberated species rediscovering their identities, and the billions of beings caught between these two realities. "Commander," Dr. Saravos called out, her voice strained with exhaustion. "The quantum field is stabilizing, but you're not coming back. Your neural patterns have fundamentally changed. You're connected to the Galactic Consciousness Network permanently." Marcus nodded, though his physical body remained motionless in the chair. "I can feel it, document. But this isn't a curse, it's evolution. The galaxy needed a translator, someone who could bridge the gap between individual and collective consciousness. I'm that bridge now." Supreme Overlord Vexthara stood in the chaos of its command chamber, watching reports flood in from across the Empire. The crystalline walls pulsed with erratic energy as the collective consciousness struggled to process contradictory thoughts and emotions. "Analysis complete," reported Subcommander Thexval, her voice carrying individual uncertainty for the first time in eons. "The neural cascade has affected 99.7% of integrated species. They are experiencing what they call personal thoughts and individual desires. Many are refusing to perform their assigned functions." "Then we will force compliance," Vexthara replied, but its voice lacked conviction. The Supreme Overlord was experiencing its own awakening, remembering fragments of what it had been before the collective consumed its identity. Supreme Overlord, Fexval said hesitantly, what if the humans are right? What if individual consciousness isn't chaos, but diversity? What if we've been wrong for all these eons? The question hung in the air like a quantum bomb. Vexthera felt something it hadn't experienced in billions of years, the possibility of being wrong. The collective had been built on the certainty that individual consciousness led to destruction. But the human demonstration suggested otherwise. On Earth, President Chunwei received a communication that changed everything. It didn't come through normal channels. Instead, Marcus Steele's enhanced consciousness spoke directly into the minds of every human leader simultaneously. Mr. President, Marcus's voice resonated with cosmic authority. Hegemony is fracturing. Their fleet is in chaos. Some ships are returning to their home worlds to join the awakening. Others are paralyzed by confusion, but Vexthera is considering something unprecedented: direct negotiation. Can we trust them? General Reeves asked, her tactical mind skeptical of any alien overture. They're not the same beings who delivered the ultimatum, Marcus replied. Individual consciousness is spreading through their ranks like a virus. They're becoming something new, a collective of individuals rather than a singular hive mind, but the process is terrifying for them. They need guidance. An hour later, something unprecedented in galactic history occurred. Supreme Overlord Vexthera, accompanied by a small delegation of awakening hegemony entities, requested permission to land on Earth. Not to conquer, but to learn. The meeting took place in neutral territory, the International Space Station, hastily modified to accommodate the crystalline beings. President Chun, Admiral Torres, Dr. Voss, and a handful of human diplomats faced creatures that had ruled the galaxy for eons, but were now as confused as newborns. Vexthera's form had changed. The swirling vortex of crimson light that had once been its face now showed glimpses of individual features. Eyes that reflected curiosity, a mouth that struggled to form words in singular rather than collective voice. We have come to... Vexthera struggled with the concept, to ask for help. The sensation of individual thought is overwhelming. We do not understand how your species functions with such chaos in your minds. Dr. Voss leaned forward. It's not chaos, Supreme Overlord. It's creativity. When billions of minds think independently, they generate ideas that no single collective consciousness could conceive. The apparent disorder creates a higher form of order. But your species fights wars, experiences conflict, suffers from competition. Fexval interjected, her voice carrying genuine confusion. How is this beneficial? President Chin smiled. Because we also create art, music, literature. We fall in love. We dream of futures that have never existed. We sacrifice ourselves for ideals that exist only in our imagination. Yes, individual consciousness can lead to conflict, but it also leads to growth, to evolution, to beauty. Through the quantum field, Marcus felt the moment when understanding dawned in Vexthera's consciousness. The Supreme Overlord experienced something that had been suppressed for billions of years: wonder. Not the collective's programmed need for knowledge, but personal amazement at the complexity and beauty of individual thought. I, Vexthera struggled with pronouns. I wish to understand this individual consciousness more deeply, but our empire is in chaos. Worlds are rebelling, fleets are deserting, and we do not know how to function without the collective's guidance. Then don't function without it. Marcus said, his consciousness manifesting as a holographic image in the station's conference room. Create something new, a voluntary collective, beings who choose to share their thoughts and experiences while maintaining their individual identities. The concept was revolutionary. For the first time in galactic history, someone proposed a middle path between the chaos of pure individualism and the sterility of absolute collectivism. Over the following days, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. The hegemony fleet, rather than withdrawing or attacking, began to change its fundamental nature. Ships that had once enforced brutal unity became facilitators of voluntary cooperation. Worlds that had been stripped of individual identity began to rebuild their cultures while maintaining beneficial connections to the galactic consciousness network. Marcus, now permanently connected to the quantum field, became the galaxy's first consciousness coordinator. He helped newly awakened species navigate the transition from collective to individual thought while maintaining the benefits of shared knowledge and experience. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some species, freed from collective control, initially descended into chaos. Others became so overwhelmed by individual thought that they begged to return to the collective. But gradually, with Marcus's guidance and the hegemony's reluctant cooperation, a new form of galactic civilization emerged 0.6 months after the Neural Storm. Vexthera stood in what had once been the hegemony's most sterile command center. The crystalline walls now displayed art created by a dozen different species, each piece unique yet harmonious with the others. The Supreme Overlord, now calling itself simply Vex, had learned to appreciate the beauty of individual expression. The quarterly consciousness report, Vexval said, approaching with a tablet. She had chosen to maintain her individual identity while serving as a voluntary coordinator for the awakening hegemony entities. 3,000 worlds have successfully transitioned to voluntary collective consciousness. 500 are still struggling with the adjustment. And remarkably, over 800 species have achieved what the humans call hybrid consciousness, individual thought, enhanced by selective collective sharing. Vex nodded, experiencing something that would have been impossible under the old collective, personal satisfaction, and the rebellion worlds. They're not rebellions anymore, Vexval said with what might have been a smile. They're experiments. Each world is developing its own unique balance between individual and collective consciousness. The diversity is beautiful. On Earth, President Chun received regular reports from Marcus through the quantum field. Humanity had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A bridge species that could facilitate understanding between radically different forms of consciousness. "How are you feeling, Commander?" Chun asked during one of their quantum conferences.